Good morning, good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. I see we have a number of attendees logging on right now. We are going to get started in about 30 seconds because we have an action-packed day ahead. So thank you all for joining. We'll just let a few additional people join in, and we will start things off with a short video.
The world was struggling. After two medical timeouts because of heat, he and the umpire had this exchange.
What can I do? I'm fine. I'll finish the match when I can die. If I die, actually, I'm gonna take responsibility because it's a very bad company.
Wow, Medvedev just saying that conditions, right? Terrible, feels terrible.
He wasn't the only athlete wilting.
Hot, humid weather plays havoc with a marathon.
The marathon and race walking had to be relocated out of Tokyo and still hot.
It's much warmer than expected.
Spain's tennis star Paula Badoza had to withdraw because of severe heat stroke. Holding another Olympics in midsummer is tempting more scorching competitions. And Europe is warming faster than other continents. But it's not just Olympics. Fires, floods, melting is forcing us to confront how is climate change impacting sport? And can sport adapt?
More than hot enough to cause serious harm to human health. Temperatures are now set to climb even higher.
Now, July is on track to be the hottest month in recorded history.
Extreme weather is disrupting world competition. A super typhoon forced World Cup rugby to cancel games for the first time ever.
Typhoon Hagibis that is heading towards Japan is predicted to have very significant and widespread impact.
Pakistan's historic floods swamped most soccer fields, except one, mercifully on higher ground.
It became the medical distribution site. It became where they served food to the community because people know where the soccer field is, but it also was the place that was dry.
Wildfires last summer dispersed red smoke thousands of kilometers, forcing pro sport to cancel games. Under the smoke, there was no community sport either.
We're going to have athletes who are barely alive and unable to perform at their best.
It's Vincent Lapointe of Canada picking up the silver.
Laurence Vincent Lapointe, who won silver and bronze, knows all about too much heat.
This was exactly what never give up means.
Her victories in Tokyo even more precious after a heat-related collapse. She told us she's never forgotten it.
I had an hour and a half to recover from my first race of the day on to my next race. Suddenly, like I said, I cannot move. I'm laying down in the shade because there's nothing to do. I'm just like feeling too sick to move. I had to jump into an ice bath. After that, they had to like lay me down in a AC room with electrolyte water and lots of protein bars and just like pressure sleeves on my legs in the air and everything. And everyone was worried, me included.
As the planet warms, beloved pastimes that rely on the snow and ice face a growing threat. Among them, outdoor skating.
The biggest thing that causes us anxiety every year is really the weather conditions. We've had 40 below, we've had 40 above. It's just been incredibly unpredictable.
In the last day or so, we have all seen on the news and social media the horrific pictures and videos coming out of Jasper. Homes and businesses have been lost to a wildfire that people are calling a wall of flames.
Madeleine Orr is urging athletes to advocate for change, using their power and influence as flag bearers for their country and for climate action.
So I just did an interview and I was asked how, as a beach volleyball player, I manage like extreme heat and heat waves, like what the Earth is currently having right now. And I accidentally got on a soapbox about how in general outdoor sports are at the mercy of climate change and are at the risk of going extinct. Obviously, so is like the entire human race and population, animals, and the earth in general, but like also sports. And I feel like maybe people don't consider how it affects sports, which is entertainment. And maybe that might get people's attention because clearly nothing else is.
But we do have everyone's attention on the call today, so thank you all for joining us. We wanted to kick things off with a little bit of a video to set the tone. I just want to confirm that everybody can see this in its full form. Yes, we're good to go. Excellent. So before we get started, I do want to acknowledge that Green Sports Day Canada acknowledges and honors that the land on which we live, work, and play across Canada is the traditional and unceded territory of numerous Indigenous peoples and nations. We recognize that Turtle Island, known as North America, is home to a multitude of Indigenous cultures, each with its unique languages, traditions, and histories. We acknowledge the profound and enduring connections of Indigenous peoples to their ancestral territories. I also learned last week that a land acknowledgement should also include action. So one piece that we wanted to include in this land acknowledgement is that Green Sports Day Canada is committed to listening, learning, and taking actions that contribute to the ongoing journey of healing and justice for all Indigenous peoples across these territories. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Maddie Orr.
Hi everyone, bonjour tout le monde et merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui pour la 4e journée des sports verts ici au Canada. Hi everybody, welcome to the 4th annual Green Sports Day here in Canada. My name is Maddie Orr. I'm a member of Green Sports Day Organizing Committee and an assistant prof at the University of Toronto where I'm in sport ecology. And it's my 4th year hosting this, which is amazing. And I'm so overjoyed to be co-hosting with the inimitable Gillian Orris, who is the Senior Advisor on Sustainability for Canada Games Council. Now, we celebrate usually on October 6th, and if you're out and about this weekend, you might notice that some of our facilities around the country are going to be lit up green in celebration. But because it's a Sunday, and we're not going to make you sit on Zoom on a Sunday, we got ahead of it this year and are celebrating all week long. So starting on Tuesday, there's been programming. If you didn't catch it, some of it is being uploaded as webinars, and you can check our website. We'll be sharing more resources as and when they are finalized and available. But today, this is the final event. Today's summit is the final in a string of activations that we're delivering with a dynamic group of partners. And so we are really privileged to be part of a group within Canada, but also within the world that is recognizing the importance of climate change and interested in driving solutions forward within sport, and then using sport as a platform to drive solutions forward beyond our facilities and communities as well. And I'll pass it back to Jill.
Excellent. So Green Sports Day is relatively new to us in Canada, having only celebrated since 2021, thanks to the massive efforts from Maddie and the team, but not really new to the world. In 2016, the Green Sports Alliance, based in the US, wrote to the White House to officially declare Green Sports Day, or October 6th, as Green Sports Day. So fast forward a few years and other countries have joined in on the fight. We're really excited to say that several jurisdictions across Canada have actually recognized Green Sports Day as October 6th. And we have proclamations from all the way from Halifax to Vancouver, from Ottawa, Regina, Victoria, and we're really seeing this effort across the country, which is super exciting. One thing we do have to acknowledge, sorry, this is the two of us, we're going to be today's hosts, but we do really want to acknowledge our amazing coalition that is backing these efforts. So we cannot come together to celebrate Green Sports Day Canada without this amazing team. So not everybody is going to be front facing, but I just want to recognize that there is a robust team backing these efforts that is doing so much work behind the scenes that not always gets recognized. So I think it's really important that we want to make sure that we see everybody who is part of this huge effort. Our collective effort is really driving meaningful change in the sport industry. We're promoting sustainability and environmental stewardship. And together, I really feel we're making a lasting impact. And we can't do it without all of these members on the slide, but also everybody on the call today. So I just wanted to set the tone to say we're all in this together. This is not a one person solution or one organization solution. We really need to work together collectively to move the dial on this. And we're seeing that happen, which is really exciting. So along with our coalition members, we really want to thank our partner groups. They are listed at the bottom of the screen for their ongoing efforts to amplify Green Sports Day through their channels. We're also really grateful to have the support of the current federal government, as this aligns with several initiatives they're focusing on. And soon we're going to hear from MP Adam Van Koeverden, who's the Parliamentary Secretary for Sport and Physical Activity and the Parliamentary Secretary for Environmental and Climate Change. So a very fitting intersection for our conversations today. And Maddie, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
So per usual, we like to go big. And so we went really big this year and decided to do lots and lots in this summit as per usual. So here's what we have lined up for you. You're going to hear from Adam Van Koeverden in just a moment. And then we're going to get into the Paris 2024 athlete panel. We have two champions, an Olympic champion, a Paralympic champion, joining us from two different sides of the country, who have are in different sports, have very different perspectives on how climate change is impacting them and what the athlete role might be in inspiring change. So I'm excited about that one. We're then going to go into an overview of a really unique sport collaboration that's come into play in the last year, and that's producing resources that are going to be really groundbreaking for the Canadian sport community moving forward. So we're excited to share that and the toolkit that's kind of a part of that. We're going to have Eileen McManaman joining us a little later to talk about sport sponsorship and how the landscape is totally changing around how sport is interacting with partners and sponsors. And this is a conversation that was not really at the foreground a few years ago. But last year, after this summit, we were told this is it. This is the conversation we want to have. And so we've invited Eileen in to lead that conversation for us. And towards the end, we're going to hear from a Canadian professional skier and filmmaker who's going to share a little bit about his experience. And from there, we're going to introduce a few films that we've been able to pull and get access to for free over the weekend. So you all can enjoy some Green Sports films via our website all weekend long. So lots to get into, but I'm going to pass the mic and introduce Adam Van Koeverden, friend of mine for the last 10 years, but he comes from an extraordinary athletic background. You can tell I'm a prof, I'm used to saying academic. Athletic background as a four-time Olympic champion, absolutely remarkable career on the water as a paddler, and then took all of that energy of learning how to channel his incredible and like he just has so much energy and passion for taking care of people around him, and he did that all through his career, working with organizations like the David Suzuki Foundation to make change as like an eco-athlete before that was even a thing. And now he's the parliamentary secretary to both the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and the Minister of Sport and Physical Activity. And there couldn't possibly be a better marriage for a Green Sports Day. So Adam, welcome. Thank you for being here. And we'd love to hear your take on like how this has come together in the last few years and how you come to the table.
Oh, thanks so much, Maddie. Nice to see you on here. Nice to see so many familiar faces, people I've known for a long time, people I've watched on TV and compete, people who, when you write things, I read them. So thank you very much for all of your work, Jillian, Maddie, and everybody who made this possible today. I'm so honored to join you on this 5th or 6th installment of Green Sports Day. I don't remember where we started, but I think I've been involved in some little way in most of them. There was one year where we actually hosted it on Parliament Hill in my office, like basically in the boardroom just next to my office, which was a huge honor and privilege. We had some athletes there. We also had ministers of sport, of health, of natural resources, of environment, and one other, I think, A bunch of people just came in and visited, which was very, very cool. And look, this conversation may be new, but it's far, far along. It's advanced. People understand what green sports all day is all about. We're taking the time to examine both climate change's impact on sports, physical activity, and recreation, as well as examining the impact that sport, physical activity, and recreation and large events have on climate change to try to mitigate those. And more than anything else, we just want to ensure that we're all using our platforms as athletes, as people who love sport, as academics, whatever it is you do, you have a platform and you have the ability to communicate effectively why climate change is important to you and should be important to Canada. So thrilled to be here. My name's Adam Van Couverden. I'm the Member of Parliament for Milton. That's where I am today. I'm on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee in the Huron-Wendat, the Algonquin, Anishinaabe, and it continues to be the home of many, many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. It's a beautiful riding, and in terms of action, I went kayaking this morning. A kayak is an Indigenous invention, so is the canoe. Katie's here, and she'll also maybe talk about how canoeing and kayaking in Canada has traditionally been like a pretty white-dominated sport, and that's unfortunate. And we need to acknowledge that a lot of the sports that we enjoy, whether it's hockey, lacrosse, canoe, kayak, or something else, probably have a lot of Indigenous roots, and taking a moment to acknowledge when you're enjoying a canoe or a kayak that those are Indigenous inventions is an important step in truth and reconciliation. So as Maddie said, I'm the Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministers of Environment and Climate Change and Sport and Physical Activity. That's Stephen Gilbo and Carla Qualtrough. For those who are unaware, I was in the national kayak team for about 18 years, went to 4 Olympics. My last one was in Rio. And after Rio, I decided that I wanted to do something different. I still love getting on the water, and I miss competing and I miss training. But time comes in everybody's life where you feel as though you got to branch out a little bit. So that's what I did in 2018. I quit my job. I was working at Deloitte, through the awesome game plan program that the Canadian Olympic Committee started, and started knocking on doors and started talking to my neighbors and launched a campaign to become a member of Parliament. I won. I'm a Liberal. I am in the middle of the political spectrum generally, but when it comes to environment, climate change, and climate action, I'm as progressive as it gets. I have been called a socialist, an environmental radical a number of times, and most recently in the House of Commons by some conservatives. I don't mind; those are badges of honor, and I'm proud to stand up for science at every opportunity. And I've seen some real progress. Not as though everything's perfect in Canada. We're still an oil-producing nation. We still have extremely high emissions profiles, but this Liberal government, over the last 9 years has made some pretty phenomenal progress. Emissions were going up in 2015 when we got elected, but they're now, emissions in Canada are 8% below the 2005 levels. We still have lots more work to do to get them to target levels around 40% below, but we're on that path, which is really, really important to recognize. It's also important to recognize why we're not, and why we're not there yet, and that's because of oil and gas production. And it's primarily driven by the oil sands, which is actually not an energy product. I'm not going to get into that. It's important to analyze and be critical of the industries that are emitting the most carbon in Canada. And in Canada, that's oil and gas, particularly the oil sands project in Alberta. But our government has supported the largest campaign ever in Canada and around the world to conserve nature, not just in Canadian history, but around the world. Our commitment to protect and conserve 30% of Canada's coastal and landmass is remarkable. We're on track to protecting 30 by 30 and putting nature on a path to full recovery by 2050. What we're all experiencing is actually a triumvirate of problems between climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And these three things combined are creating the climate crisis and the environmental crisis that we're all living through. In the last week, I've had the opportunity to speak at 3 biodiversity conferences, one in Gros Morne in Newfoundland, and 2 in Ottawa with the IUCN and the World Trades Conference. It's an awesome organization focused on conservation and access. The reason that access is so important is it builds more natural environmental champions. If every kid gets outside for half an hour every day, then they're more likely to care about the environment as they grow up and be willing to and be interested in taking environmental action. So we're making progress on all of those targets, and we're being criticized for it. Every single day in the House of Commons, I answer questions and we get criticism on why we're pricing pollution. Canada's price on pollution is ambitious, and the Conservatives have been saying that it's causing inflation for the last 5 years. Interesting though, because the price on pollution has been going up for the last 5 years and inflation has been going down dramatically for the last 3. Out of the G7, we're the only country that prices pollution nationally. It's usually done on a subnational level, like in the United States, it's state by state. California prices carbon, and so do other states. But in Canada, not all provinces want to. We used to have cap and trade in Ontario, and Doug Ford canceled it. So the federal government came through with a national pollution pricing system, and it is driving down our emissions, not just the consumer side, but also on the industrial side. It's doing its work, and it's effective. It's science-based. And look, there's a guy who won a Nobel Prize in economics for his work on carbon pricing. William Nordhaus says we're getting it right. Maddie accidentally said that my academics are something impressive. They're not. I have a gym degree with a minor in environmental science. But people smarter than us say that our carbon pricing system in Canada is getting it right. So I think we should listen to experts rather than pundits and people with career politics ambitions. I don't want to be a career politician. I got involved in politics because it was the right thing to do at the right time. I'm proud of this government. I think they've been making great progress on things like climate action, truth and reconciliation, and poverty elimination. And I'm proud of that work, and I hope it can continue. So if I can leave you with just one thing, actually, I did want to talk about Paris. Obviously, I didn't compete in Paris, but I was there, and everybody who was in Paris probably recognizes what a phenomenal job they did being leaders in demonstrating that large events don't have to be massive emitting events. I was proud of it. Obviously, it's a start, but stating it as a goal, as a core goal of your event is really, really phenomenal. And then, the details get sort of machinated out as you go. But one of the things that I noticed, obviously, is just plastic. And plastic isn't the cause of climate change. It's more complex than that. But there were way, way fewer plastic trinkets and bottles in Paris, and way fewer new buildings and wasteful projects and infrastructure that was going to get used once. And I still have the transit pass that they gave me in my wallet. That's just, those are good actions. And I had a chance to meet with the sustainability officer of the Paris Olympics while I was there and speak briefly at one conference. And that was really, really great. I know a lot of people were there doing that kind of work too. But this is what I want to leave you with. In 2018, I decided I love Canada. I want to make a difference. I'm going to step up and I'm going to do something different than a lot of, other Olympic athletes who are going through their retirement do. I decided to get involved in politics. I'm not going to suggest that getting involved in politics is the best way or the only way to force home an agenda or to be a leader or to support our country and guide, policy and people and programs in the right direction. But it is one way. And there are elections all the time. And I would love to see more people from sport, both coaches, athletes, administrators, wherever you're from, getting involved in public action, civic action, and politics. It's fun. It's hard work. It's the sport of people. You get to engage with hundreds of people every single week, and it takes a lot of hard work. And if you do it properly, then you can make a real difference. There's just a lot of politicians who are doing it improperly. We all know who I'm talking about. There's people who are in it for the wrong reasons. They're getting rich off of politics and policies that they're putting in place in order to enrich themselves and their friends. And that's BS. That's not why we elect people. We elect people because we want a stronger environmental policy, or we want stronger social policy, or we want better programs and policies that are going to support, not just the next 6 months, not get us to the next election, not make people happy for like a weekend or a week or create a headline. We should be electing people that care about the planet for 7 generations, for 50 years, for 100 years. And that's what we're talking about. When we heard Melissa, who did such an amazing job, I watched her 4 times in Paris. I'm just such a huge fan of all the athletes that competed. But we heard Melissa say it very, very clearly. We're not talking about icebergs and polar bears. We're talking about our survival, the survival of our very species. It's not just about canoe kayak and beach volleyball. It's about the viability of humans. And if you don't believe that's true, then all you have to know is that in the last 3 years, 43% of the people around the world who were forced out of their homes because of wildfires are Canadians. I'll remind you that Canada is only 0.5% of the global population. We are extremely vulnerable to climate change in Canada, and we're also some of the highest emitters in Canada. We have an obligation, and we should have a lot of urgency to deal with the climate crisis, to lower our emissions, and to change the trajectory of climate change. Because if we don't, then 7 generations forward in our for our species is nothing certain. So that's it for me. Sorry for the gloom and doom on Friday afternoon, but I want to inspire people to get more involved. Maddie, sorry for going a couple minutes over, but I love Green Sports Day. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk. Reach out to me anytime. I'm easy to get a hold of on Instagram. I have a public email. I love engaging with athletes on these issues and topics. So I hope to hear more today about all the inspiring stuff people are out there doing. And if you're interested in politics, policy, or literally anything that I've mentioned, please reach out. Love you guys. Happy Green Sports Day, and thanks for all your work.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Adam. We're going from strength to strength here, from Olympic champions to Olympic champions. So this is like a good segue. Thanks for teeing it up, Adam. I am so excited to have Katie Vincent and Greg Stewart with us, respectively an Olympic champion in canoe and Paralympic champion in shot put. These are some of Canada's finest. And one of the things that I find so inspiring about the two of them as well is, if you follow either of these people on social media, you may have noticed that they get around. They are in their communities, they're talking to people. Greg has this amazing platform around mental health and well-being. Like, there's just so much good intention coming out of these two, and they just represent everything that is so good about Canada. Like, when people say that, like, oh, the Canadians are the nice ones, like, they're probably talking about Katie and Greg. And so we were so excited that they said yes. And I'm so delighted that I get to have this conversation with them today. So we'll start with Paris. Adam kind of ended with Paris, so we'll start there. You both just got back recently, successful campaign, but Paris, like, going into it, there was a lot of concern around, is it going to be hot? What's it going to feel like? What's going to be the vibe on the ground? Huge sustainability campaign, which is like amazing. And then also how did that all go down for you? So from like the sustainability climate lens, walk us through Paris a little bit. And then I'm going to ask you about your actual campaigns and how well they went, but we'll start with just like the vibes, like set it up for us, for those who weren't in the city. And Katie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me today. And yeah, so for us, obviously, yeah, outdoor sport, super dependent on lakes and rivers being safe and accessible for us to paddle on. We were not competing on the Seine, we never were, so that was never a concern for our sport. We were always on a separate place, but just hearing that was, like, as a water sport, just like super devastating to hear what those athletes had to go through. So I got a lot of people asking me if that's where we were competing, but it was not. We were on a separate lake that seemed like pretty clean and safe water. And going into it, yeah, it was a lot of talk about the heat, obviously being an outdoor sport. And if you watch the video, the schedule was the same as Tokyo, how Laurence struggled. I was kind of reliving that moment, hearing her talk about it. But we had the same schedule in Paris with 90 minutes between semifinal of the Olympics, which is probably your hardest race, going into the final, which is 5 times harder than that. So we have a lot of discussions on managing our bodies and how to recover, not recover too much, stay warmed up, but cool down and flush out the lactate, how to warm up. It's probably about a 5 to 6 hour from your warm up of your semifinal to the finish of the final and cool down. So we talk a lot about how to manage that moment, and it's a make or break moment. And if you don't manage it well and you go into the final dehydrated or overheated, you're not going to have a good time. So we definitely discussed a lot of that heading into Paris. And we were very lucky. It was actually a lot more mild than we anticipated it. So I think from our end, we were expecting it to be a lot worse heat wise. Ended up being very, very manageable for us.
Greg, you were there a couple weeks later, but kind of similar vibes. Like, people were worried about what the conditions were going to be going in. What was your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I apologize if you can't, or if I'm loud. Currently sitting outside with Shuswap Lake, right behind me. And Adam, I appreciate you talking about wildfires, because I'm actually staring across the lake and I could see about 20 to 30 homes that perished during the Shuswap wildfires last year. So it is very real. It is happening everywhere. And it's a good conversation that we need to continue to have. And honestly, to parallel with Katie, we the way Team Canada prepares for the Olympic Paralympic Games is all very consistent. Acclimatization is real, ensuring that, you know, hydration is probably the most important thing that is pushed on us. At the Paralympic Games, the weather was actually somewhat, I'm not going to say calmer, but it was lower temperatures. But we expected that to happen. But at the same time, too, we were also expecting that things can change rapidly, which they typically do. And myself, I come from Kamloops. We're used to really high heat. We don't typically have humidity, whereas Paris had a little bit more of the humidity side, but I'm used to the high heat. Unfortunately, in Kamloops, our heat has been getting higher and higher. And so at times it can be a real challenge. In shot put, you get 1 minute to throw. And so in between those throws, we're constantly being like, okay, are we hydrated? You know, do we have a cooling vest on us and to ensure that we can cool ourselves down? What has Paris done in terms of supporting, you know, is there water around? I don't know what it was like for Katie, but there's tons and tons of coolers around with cold water, with cold, you know, hydration packs, everything like that. But on top of it, Paris did an excellent job of continuing to create what Tokyo 2020 created in terms of sustainability. I don't know if anyone is aware, but I don't have it on me, but the gold medals that came out of Tokyo were actually from sustained metals. So all the 6 grams of gold that are found on all the metals came from recycled electronics that Japan itself broke down and whatnot to create these metals. And Paris did a very similar job of continuing to create a level of sustainability. I don't know if the gold is the same. Katie, you might know, I'm not sure, but the beds sure are the same. I don't know what you had at the lake, but the cardboard beds were real and really uncomfortable, but that's another story. But yes, sustainability has been consistently you know, being passed on. And I think for every games moving forward, they're going to continue to use the pathways that we're using to support a greener and more sustainable future for these games.
I like that you brought up where you are because I think there's something so unique about Canada's backyard. We have one of the biggest backyards in the world. And it, you know, as Adam said, 43% of the people displaced from wildfire last year were in Canada. The numbers that I saw were that 97% of people were breathing bad air because of wildfires in Canada for a period of at least 4 days in 2023, which is just like a bonkers number. Like that's everybody, regardless of whether you live near the flames or not. And so I'm curious about like the path to the games. We all see 2 weeks of glorious television and excitement, but there's years that goes into that. And so, you know, talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in your run up to these games or in previous years. Like how has this impacted places you've competed here in Canada, around the world, place like your home? Like what are you seeing kind of in the day to day? And Greg, will come to you first because you're literally looking at it.
Yeah, so this year for Paris was a little bit different than Tokyo, and I want to reflect on Tokyo because that's the one that drastically impacted our environment. When they do like the parts per million for air quality, I think it's like a scale of 0 to 10. When I was training for Tokyo, our parts per million was 497. It was between like 300 and 400 for like weeks on end. And it was something that like the air purifiers and stuff like that, all of those, of course, are selling out, everything like that. But that is what we dealt with for our whole summer leading up to Tokyo. So I actually had to leave and I went to the Vancouver Island in order to train because there was no way that I was going to stand outside huffing and puffing from training and breathing that air in. And so it's drastically, and it's unfortunate because the conversation that everybody in the Okanagan, Thompson Okanagan, has right before summer starts is this going to be a fire season? Are we going to be prevented the opportunity to go camping, to be outside, to enjoy our summers because we can't see across the valley because the smoke is too thick? These are constant conversations that we are always having, and we are actually making a game plan for our summer training season dependent on what the weather is going to be. So it is something that drastically impacts us. You know, every training season. I don't know what it's like for Katie, but that's a quick reflection. That's what it was like going into Tokyo 2020.
I'm gonna like put my scientist hat on for like 4 seconds. When I work with athletes, one of the things that I'm always reminding athletes and the public and parents especially, because like this is something that you might not think about for your kids, your 6-year-old soccer game, but when you breathe through your mouth when you're huffing and puffing as an athlete, you can take it up to 20% more air volume than a person who's just like sitting outside. And that means that athletes are actually more at risk than your average person when we get bad air quality. So it's not like there's the air quality index that Canada has. It's 1 to 10, like Greg said. And that's really important as a metric. Anything above about 4 or 5, you probably want to make adaptations to what you're doing. And anything above about 7, you probably want to not. But when you're thinking about that, just consider that, you know, we usually think athletes, because people are in good shape and they're used to doing this, it's fine. It's actually the opposite. You're more at risk as an athlete from things like air pollution. So wanted to flag that for anyone on the call. Katie, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, so a good example is, so we actually are based in Halifax in the summer, and I think it was last summer, there was the fires in Nova Scotia. And that actually really affected our training because the air quality, as like Greg mentioned, it was like, it was crazy. Like it was like gray in the, all over the skies, like just the air. So when we were training, preparing for our Olympic qualifier in Germany last summer, we had to like adjust training. Some people were getting sick because you're trying to go out there and on the water and your workouts are, you know, just breathing really hard for an hour. And it was incredibly challenging time to like navigate how to like, do we go somewhere? Like, when will it clear up? You know, when is this going to stop? So it does affect, you know, our sport as well. And then, yeah, for us, it's especially in the summertime, it's always about managing the heat and especially the training, like competition. It's one thing when you're on the water for, you know, 25, 30 minutes and your race is 45 seconds to 3.5 minutes if you're in Adam Vancouverton. But it's another thing when you're out there in June and July doing your last bit of hard work and you're going as hard as you can for an hour or 75 minutes. And that's when it's really, really affecting you when it's super hot. And that's when we have to start changing our workouts or managing our recovery differently. And that's when our training gets the most affected. And that's what we talk about in the most in July, especially like when we're getting closer to competition, your training kind of cuts down, but your intensity goes up. So when you're right before a big race, you might be doing your hardest intensity workouts and it's going to be 45 degrees and you want to do it at the times you compete. So you're going out at noon, it's 45 degrees and you're trying to grind out a workout. And I've never sweat so much as I did in July. We were training in the south of France and it was so hot. But then we got up to Paris and it was cold for us because we had been training. So there was like a weird benefit to doing that where it actually ended up being cooler for us. But just it being so hot where we were, and it was like, it was unbelievable. And Tokyo, just competing and training there before was also pretty extreme for us. And we shortened workouts, we cut efforts out just to like make sure we weren't overdoing ourselves too much.
It's wild to hear because it's one of those things too, where it's like, there's that hour on the water and then there's the whole rest of your day. And if you're not hydrated before you get on the water, there's no amount of like rehydration in the middle of it that's going to fix it. And that's also something that always comes up is like, yeah, these conditions are not just impacting athletes when they're physically playing, like it's the rest of the day. I mean, Greg, you mentioned the beds, and I'm going to come back to that in Tokyo. Like the recovery, the life, like how you're getting your food, all these other things become are part of it. And if that's not lining up because it's, you know, too hard to be outside for months on end, you're having to go somewhere else, or you know, you're getting dehydrated during the day before you even get onto, you know, into the ring or onto the water, then that's a huge problem. And it's good to see all the sustainability solutions, but recovery is really important too. So Greg, I just want to come real quick on recovery to you, and just like out of the scope of competition, this is impacting a lot of things.
Yeah, totally. So recovery is huge. You guys can't see it in camera, but I'm also a very large person. I'm 7'2" and 360 pounds. So I'm a very large person. So recovery is a really key thing. Yeah, unfortunately, the beds were challenging to recover on when you don't fit on it properly. But that's a common problem on every bed. And I sleep in a king size bed and I still hang over the edge. That's a side note. But like one of the things that we are trying to accommodate for one another is ensuring that everyone is consistently hydrated. It is always the conversation, what is your levels at? And I don't know what it was like for Katie, but our team were constantly doing hydration tests, P tests to ensure that we're meeting the hydration levels. But like for me, during the heat, I was consuming anywhere from 6 to 8 liters of water. And typically 2 of those liters are always some form of hydration, BioSteel, that sort of thing, to ensure that we have the recovery. But then on top of it, you have to add the food to it to ensure you're getting the nutrition to support yourself. But yeah, like I literally just drew a blank. My apologies. But yeah, sorry, I've been wanting to say this whole time. Katie, way to crush it. You absolutely crushed it at the game. So hey, super proud of you. It was so fun to watch. You know, coming from bronze, you know, in Tokyo, and then it was on your own, I think, in the you know, it's so much easier when it's on your own. But anyways, absolutely crushed it. But yeah, sustainability, hydration is key. Hydration is key. Okay, sorry. And so is mental health. Okay. Katie.
I am gonna echo that, Katie. That was so fun to watch. And Greg, you were so fun to watch. That was like, it was such a fun games for like, honestly, both of you. I was glued to my TV. And I was in Paris and I saw a lot of the sustainability stuff Adam was talking about, and I've kind of been in touch with the Paris organizers for years ahead of time, kind of figuring out what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. They moved the needle on a lot of things. It was imperfect. It's always going to be imperfect. I think that's okay. I think that's kind of one of the pieces that as sustainability oriented people, as people who give a damn, we have to recognize that like it's okay. It's not going to be perfect. That's fine. Like the effort is there. That's what counts. And so, Katie, I'm curious, like from the athlete standpoint, you know, the fans got to see the water bottle refill stations. We got to see that there's slightly less plastic. We got to see, you know, a lot of public transit use for fans getting around. What was it for the athletes? Like, what was the food vibes? What was the bed? I know, Greg, the bed was awful, but yeah. Like, what was it like from like on the inside, the parts that we never get to see?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Greg, comeback king. Come on, man. Yeah, like incredible. Yeah, so for us, we were actually in a satellite village, canoe kayak and rowing and canoe sprint and slalom. So we were actually at a hotel closer to our venue. So that was just a bit easier to manage than kind of traveling across Paris every day. So yeah, for us, in terms of it was a pretty short drive, so it shortened our drive down. I was only in the village, honestly, 24 hours. So I don't have much there, but at least at our venue, yeah, like how Greg had, we had tons of coolers around of waters and Powerades and electrolytes available. We had access to showers and the towels and that you would return right away so they could wash them. So there was doing a lot of little things that just like kind of made your experience easier. And I think, you know, in our just having the spectators there, like people were, yeah, when we were driving in, people were walking from the train station over to the venue because we were right near one of the train stations. So that was pretty cool that people could come in from Paris like via just the taking the like I want to say the go train, but their train and because of go train went by. But so that was really cool to just like we would just be driving in on our like kind of shuttle and then there'd be like thousands of people just walking down the street getting into the venue. So that was really cool to have, you know, 20,000, 30,000 people there. I know a lot of people don't go to canoe kayak events between the games. So usually we get like at a max, you know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000. So have that many people supported. My parents kept all the cups they got, the reusable cups. They're now in the kitchen so that they can relive the moments. So there was a lot of efforts made to just make sure it was sustainable games and to make sure that, yeah, there was at least waste. And I think one of the coolest things as an athlete that was very different from other major events and games was when we got the medals, they handed us that box. Now, usually we get like flowers and you get all these flowers and then you kind of have to throw them out because like, what can you do with flowers after a certain period of time? And I've brought so many little bouquets of flowers home over the years. But in Paris, they gave us these boxes that had a poster in them, and I'm getting them framed right now. So I thought that was a very cool way to kind of do something different that we'll actually keep versus some pretty flowers for a photo I mean, maybe it didn't look as great with these boxes, but I'll have a very cool poster hanging in my house for the rest of my life. So I thought that was a very cool thing that they did differently.
Did they do that for you too, Greg?
Yeah, I got the posters are sick. I actually just unraveled mine the other day. So, but I just wanted to add, I know I didn't speak about like the food and whatnot within the village because we were housed in the village for about 10 days. But will always be complaints about food. Doesn't matter where you go, but you also are trying to feed, 5 to 10,000 people, depending on what the games is. I've My acknowledgement would be is flavor. Everything is a bit of a privilege, in a way, and it's something that I noticed was commonly the problem. It was the food wasn't flavorful, um, but how can you make something flavorful that is supporting again 5 to 10,000 people? I think Paris did an incredible job. They actually had like the dirty dishes, silverware compost, which I hadn't seen at any game. So they were composting all of their food, which was, I think, a huge, huge success. Everything was reusable on there. There wasn't any like paper cups, anything like that. Everything was reusable. The only thing that I thought was kind of the only downside is we all got like an athlete package, which consisted of like 2 or 3 water bottles in it. I appreciate, us staying hydration, but I'm like, how many of those do we already have at home? And do we need to add more to our collection? And then, so going back to reusable water bottles, I think that should actually be a serious conversation. It's like there are so many. I would guarantee everybody on this call has at least 2 or 3 of them. So it's just being mindful of that sort of thing. So, but the village is cool. Um, Electric cars everywhere, to get athletes around. I don't know, Katie, if your experience was the same, but because we're para athletes, a lot of wheelchair and leg apps in there, so mobility is very limited. So you have to ensure that we have a lot of space so people could move around, and all of the spaces were wheelchair accessible as well. So
I have one. Okay, so I have 2 questions left. I'm gonna get each of them to one of you. Katie, is this a conversation that athletes are having? Like, is it something that you're talking about? Like, oh, like the heat is definitely something we have. Like, is this a thing, or is this kind of a conversation we're having because it's Green Sports Day, but otherwise, like, whatever?
Yeah, no, it's totally a thing, like especially in our sport, like we train on lakes and rivers all over the world. So a huge part of protecting and conserving those bodies of water is super important for our sport, just from like a training and perspective. And if we want to grow our sport, we need to have safe water, accessible water for canoe clubs to start. And that's not just in Canada, that's around the world. So it's a lot of conversation about how to first protect the waters and ensure that they're safe, because that's how we can continue to train and grow our sport. And yeah, a lot of conversation about heat, and especially because our world championships we're a very seasonal sport. We only compete between like May to September just because of natural seasons in the northern hemisphere. So it's about finding the right ways to compete at the right times. Like I've competed in Tokyo where it's like almost 50 degrees. But 8 months, I remember it was 8 months after the Olympics, we were doing our national team trials in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia in like end of April, and it was 0 degrees. So I raced from 50, like a 50-degree change in 8 months doing the same events. And it's like, how do you even like a completely different preparation, completely different mindset? Like you're going from like having cool vests and like ice towels all over you to like mittens and toques on the water, like, and there's frost on your boat. So it's like, and that's so hard to compete on. That's 2 complete ends of the spectrum, right? And so obviously the ideal would probably be like low 20s, right? So it's how do we find those places at the right times of the year and train in those climates and environments? And it's just increasing the difficult to find it in an affordable way, because our NSOs also have limited budgets. So it's hard to find places and to train. And that's a problem that countries globally are having, especially in a country like ours, where we're one of the only countries where we have to go somewhere south to train in the winter because we can't paddle in Canada. The Australians don't have that problem. Southern Spain and Portuguese, they don't have that problem. And a lot of Europeans, it's so much more accessible. But for us, it's a huge expense and it puts us so far in the red. And then that affects our training and our ability to compete because we have so much less money. So it's about finding, a little bit more money to, I think, accommodate what's happening in the world and allowing us to find those opportunities to train in good weather and nice climates. And then also, making sure that our sport is changing as well. And they also hand out water bottle. They've gone from bottles of water to water bottle stations and stuff, which is pretty big for our sport. So just having those conversations within the event platform as well, and in the major events, to make sure that things are becoming more sustainable. And I think it's definitely a conversation athletes are having now, especially as, things cost more and budgets aren't changing, and we're all trying to continue to enjoy and love our sport. And I think Melissa said it, that's maybe that's the conversation. Maybe sport's the thing that gets affected, that everyone starts paying attention. And I hope things just kind of continue to change, and that we can continue to like compete and love our sports, and love the rivers and lakes that we paddle on.
Amazing. I love to hear that it's a thing, because some of the people on the call have been doing this like on the sidelines for 20, 30 years, and finally people are talking about it. So it's good to hear that the athletes are picking it up and having that conversation. Greg, last question for you. Actually, like two things. First thing, I know you got married very recently, so congratulations on getting married 5 days ago. It's excellent. Been here for you, so congrats. I wanted to come to you. The last question I had was about like this role of athletes, right? Like Melissa touched on it, Katie touched on it. There's a unique position where little kids look up to big kids look up to athletes. The rest of us look up to athletes. And, research out of MIT has shown that athletes since 2000 are the most visible and influential people in the world. You've taken that on in a big way, and had these kind of public conversations around mental health and well-being. And I'm curious to you, like, was it like a personal, like, I feel like this is something I should be doing, or is it a kind of a bigger call to action for athletes around, we all could be having this conversation, we all could care about something in public?
Well, I think there's two parts to that. The first is, and I think it's something that we don't sign up for, but it automatically is presented to us, in that athletes in general are put on a pedestal. The moment that we choose to step into a place of leadership, I'd say, or maybe a little bit of power, we are instantly put on a pedestal. And oftentimes that pedestal is leading to performance, and that we have to do well, or we have to perform under, pressure and circumstances to, be our best. And I know there's a question in the prompt there about like finance and funding and everything like that. And I know Katie can understand this, is, Canadian athletes, even though when we sign up, we're put on this pedestal to win and achieve all these great things, we're still not funded in order to do that. And it is a huge, huge amount of pressure that's put on us to develop things, because what is the cost of rent today in Canada? What is the cost of food, everything like that. And this pedestal that we're so constantly being judged or compared to, doesn't meet all the other things attached to it, which then adds even more pressure to our performances. However, I can say, like, myself and Katie, acted on it and were able to perform. So I think the pedestal is one piece. The other thing that I think is really, really important, and I think this is just practicing and understanding mindfulness, which is something that I'm constantly talking about, is, as athletes, we are always in a position of reflection. We are constantly reflecting on, how do I feel? How do I look? Constantly in a place of probably unhealthy judgment, where we're constantly checking in on ourselves, which I would say most people don't do. And because we are constantly in this place of reflection, constantly learning about ourselves, constantly putting ourselves in a place of self-vulnerability, because we are always pushing ourselves to failure so that we can grow and build from, people recognize that. People see, oh, Katie, Katie won a gold medal at the Olympics. But not only that, she is pushing herself. I think people are starting to recognize that it's not just, they don't see just 2 weeks anymore. They're starting to see like her story. They're starting to understand that what the development and planning it takes for her to achieve great things. And I think because we're having more of an open conversation about it, people are starting to listen. And since MIT's investigation and study and whatnot since 2000, I just think there's more people that actually care, that actually want to learn, that actually want to understand what's going on with their lives. Because this is the really unique thing that I think applies to all of us is I'm a shot putter. I throw rocks. Katie throws her, paddle into the ground and, is paddling. Yes, we're both doing completely two different sports and we're very different, but we're still experiencing the same emotions. We're still experiencing failure. We're still experiencing triumph. We're experiencing all of these things. Even though we're different, that actually makes us the same. And I think people are starting to understand that our differences are what make us unique, but they also make us the same because we're all going through them. And it's just learning to, see that and understand that, but also as athletes, learning your platform and understanding what you're doing, because we are constantly in a place of self-reflection, I think it would be silly for us not to share. Because the way I'm supporting myself can also support other people. And then just to finish it off, there are 3 really important things that I feel that if we can learn to understand more, we can all create really great things. And on top of it, we can create a more sustainable future for ourselves because we are owning up to being in a place of trust. We are trusting our actions. We're taking ownership of the things that we said we are going to do. And we're aligning with our values and beliefs, or in this case, our own integrity. And if we can understand those 3 things and start applying them on a regular basis, going back to Adam's thing, I think we would have a lot less BS in politics because people are being true to themselves, right? We're not doing it for money. We're doing it because we want the environment to be better. That's integrity to us. We're owning the fact that I don't agree with this and we're trusting in our actions. I'm going to ramble on this because I love this, but yeah, athletes have a platform and it's important that we share it so that we can not only support ourselves, but learn to support other people.
Well, thank you both so much for being a part of this. I know the people on the call have really enjoyed it. There's been like little clapping emoji thingies going up on the side of my screen when both of you are talking. So I know it's been really appreciated. And I just wanted to, once again, just say congratulations to both of you on just an incredible season. And I hope you get some rest. And Greg, I hope you get like a honeymoon or like a moment to yourself at some point to enjoy that. But thank you again. And I am going to pass it to Jill to introduce our next group of speakers. Congratulations. Happy Green Sports Day. Thank you both.
Amazing. Maddie, thank you so much for hosting that great panel. Katie, Greg, thank you so much for setting the tone, the energy, and all the positive comments and feedback. And yeah, just really loved that conversation. So thank you all for being here with us. On that note, we're going to go from sort of the global look at the Paris Games, and we're going to take this into the Canadian market. So really excited to announce this unique collaboration. We're calling it the Sustainable Sport Collaboration with the 2025 Canada Games, the Canada Games Council, an organization called Racing to Zero you're going to hear about shortly, and the University of Toronto. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Colin Campbell, who is the Associate Director of Partnerships at the Climate Positive Energy Group out of the University of Toronto. But what we would like is if anybody has questions throughout this segment, and I will say for the rest of the summit, please put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your chat. You can see it. There's a little bubbles, 2 little discussion bubbles. We will try to get to questions as we can, but what we will do is we will collect them all and we will answer them on our social media channels in the next few weeks if we don't get to them today. So with that, Colin, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Jill. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I think I just wanted to start by saying I'm very excited to be here, and I representing Climate Positive Energy. I just, before we jump into this exact collaboration, I just wanted to note that I have the amazing opportunity, I just wanted to make sure it was known, to represent hundreds of researchers right now that are actively pursuing solutions to climate change and tackling climate change. So, and they have thousands of students working with them. We're going to be speaking with one of them here today, but I just wanted to let you know, emphasize, and that's just at UFT, University of Toronto alone. There are lots of people working on this problem. It extends throughout our society, and there's an army of people working towards it. So with that, I'm going to introduce the team here from the University of Toronto, we have Professor Yu Li and Shashi Kant. Today they will be represented by postdoctoral fellow Ashita Alamruja. They are at the Institute for Management and Innovation at U of T Mississauga campus. We also will have Jill joining this conversation from Canada Games Council. I know she's been introduced, but she's advisor to everything sustainability impact related at the Canada Games Council. And we are joined also by the host society for the 2025 Canada Games with Isaac Owens-Frank, who is the sustainability coordinator for the 2025 Canada Games and liaison between the research team and the host society. And then last but not least, with Oliver Schofield, co-founder, executive director at Racing to Zero, and also 10 years on the Canada's field hockey team, competed at Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics, representing Racing to Zero, a not-for-profit sustainability consultancy run by a team of Canadian Olympians and Paralympians that works with sport organizations of all sizes to help them better understand and mitigate their environmental impacts. So this is the amazing team that have come together. I have the privilege of sort of introducing this project, and then I'm going to pass it over to everyone to speak about their roles and what excites them about this project and initiative. So first off, I just want to mention this is a project that aims to address the lack of a comprehensive and consistent framework around Scope 3 emissions. I think you'll hear a little bit more about what that is, specifically in sport. And while seeking to find opportunities to make it easier for future organizations to estimate their emissions, both in sport, but also in large scale events and the convening of humans around the world. So it's quite interesting and exciting. One of the gaps that it's looking to address is really just around the comprehensiveness and a consistent framework that today has been looked at, but maybe not to the degree that we could estimate the impact of sport. Right now, it's mostly done in a retrospective nature, so looking at it after an event. However, in sport, we know that there's the lead up, the pre-event stage, the event stage, and post-event stage. So this is there has been some work done on this, and so this looks to build on that, and again, improve the standardization and comparison of this estimation across sports and from sport to sport. So just to give a little context about how it came to be, I had the privilege of joining this coalition last year for Green Sports Day 2023. And that's where we started to meet some of these amazing organizations and introduce some work that was happening at the University of Toronto to the group. We put a proposal together at the beginning of this year to seek some funding to support this project. And we were successful from that in funding from the Canadian government. So we were very happy to receive that funding. And with that, I now want to open it up for some discussion and introduce or pass the platform over to our group here. So I think with that, maybe I will start with Jill to talk about role and what she's excited about the project.
Absolutely. So like Colin said, this project's a really unique one. There's a number of different partner groups that have come together to sort of say, let's do this in tandem. So I'll rewind a little bit to when I joined the Canada Games Council just in 2023. And part of our mission was to measure the greenhouse gas emissions of the 2025 games. Now, I'll be very transparent here. I work in sustainability, but I am definitely not a GHG emission expert at all. So I was interested in the challenge, ready to take it on. And Isaac and I had a couple meetings and we both sort of said, okay, this is going to be a beast. So how can we tap into sort of our organizations that we know and find some support in order for us to do this? At the same time, Colin and I were working on 2023 Green Sports Day, and just through Green Sports Day Canada, we were able to make the connection, and he brought in his eyes from the climate positive energy group, and they had put together this proposal, asked us if we would be interested, and Isaac and I both were like, absolutely, we need all the help we can get. This is going to be a very big project. So from there, we started to have some conversations with the working group. We collaborated on the proposal, and then we said, you know, there's a little bit missing here with some of the scopes that we want to look at. So we want this project to be in full. We want to measure scope 1, 2, and 3. And the project we were talking about was very specific to scope 3. So we decided to bring in Racing to Zero to look at measurements for scope 1 and 2. And that's how we kind of created this really unique working group. Now, I will say that we would most likely be really, really pressed to measure the admissions of the 2025 games if it wasn't for everybody on this call and a lot of members behind the scenes. So what we've done is we've just tried to find a really collaborative way to bring experts in the field together to find solutions. Now, this is not going to be tangible for everybody or accessible for everybody, but we wanted to take today to just express the fact that, you know, if you look at things in a unique and sort of out of the box way, you may be able to find some solutions. And we really do encourage everybody to reach out. We're really excited about this, and we're really hoping that we can announce, or I guess disclose, some of the information that we find in the 2025 games at Green Sports Day Canada 2025 next year. So that's what I'm excited about, and that's sort of the background of this project.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jill. I think maybe we'll continue moving it around. Oliver, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, for the platform. Thank you to all the speakers before us. It's been really amazing to hear everyone's perspectives. Yeah, on this project, so just a bit more about our role in this. It's really exciting to be involved. We are going to be involved or responsible, sorry, for the scope 1 and 2 emissions. So for those of you who don't know, we're looking at scope 1 is kind of your direct emissions from your owned and your controlled sources. So we're looking venues of all the facilities. We're looking at vehicles moving around the city and around the venues that are controlled by the Canada Games. And then scope 2 is your indirect emissions, essentially from the purchase of electricity, heat, and steam. So, you know, anything pulling electricity from the grid system, those emissions is what we're going to be responsible for. But yeah, really excited to be a part of this. Obviously, we get to collaborate with the biggest multi-sport, you know, games in Canada, with some leading experts on this, and knowing that it's going to go towards developing a framework that can be used in the future. I think that's really important to us. I mean, you see the Olympics, the IOC's taken a big stand on this. Paris was the biggest, you know, they put the most effort into sustainability yet of any games. And so it's really important for us to kind of follow suit from that top level into all levels of sport. So this multi-sports games like this, also international bodies, provincial bodies, and even grassroots clubs. So yeah, just really excited to be involved. And yeah, we will hopefully be able to give some good results next year. But yeah, I'll hand it back over to you, Colin.
Thanks, Oliver. And I think next, let's hear from Ashita.
Yeah, so thank you, Colin. At the UFT, our team is responsible for the overall, management of the project. And but I think the key focus and what got us interested into the project was the measurement of the scope 3 emissions. And scope 3 emissions are the less visible part of the greenhouse gas emissions, because these are like indirect emissions that come about because of the event, but they are generally outside the direct control of the organizers. So, things like spectator travel, participant travel, waste disposal, all of that. So we were very excited, and we are very excited to participate for many, many reasons. But I think I'll highlight just one or two things. One is, like Jill mentioned, we are kind of pushing the boundaries of environmental responsibility, because we're looking at a comprehensive carbon footprint. So we're looking at 1, 2, and 3. And, kind of spotlighting this less visible aspect of, the reasons for climate change. And secondly, like Oliver mentioned, this is a very complex thing, because you have a multi-sport, multi-day event with many diverse stakeholders, many delivery partners. So it gives us an opportunity to explore innovative methods for quantifying Scope 3 emissions. Things like if the events are non-ticketed, how do you calculate the associated carbon footprint? Or can you better your estimates of carbon footprinting there? So, things like this that excites us, the opportunity to explore innovative methods, but also the opportunity to kind of contribute to the overall goal that all of us have towards going towards net zero, because we recognize sports have a great demonstration effect. So, that was something that was really interesting, that we're able to kind of join hands with such an elite group of people, people, Olympians. I'm almost, fangirling here looking at the Olympic winners. So, Olympians and working with Olympians like Oliver from Racing to Zero, who've got valuable sector expertise, and obviously, the Canada Games Council and Isaac from the host society, who committed to this, because this is not going to be an easy exercise. Again, using the word Jill used, beast of an exercise. So that is what excited us. So, but before I kind of give it back to you, I think we should thank you at UFT, because you got all of us together. And we put in that proposal sometime in January and got this grant. And obviously, I think we should also thank Government of Canada and the Rotman's Michael Leachin Family Institute that's actually also supporting the project. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ashita. Yes. Yes, it is like an all hands on deck effort to do this work. And so I think, yeah, well done to the entire team here. And just last but not least, obviously our host society, Isaac, over to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here and for the opportunity to speak. Really excited about this project. My role is more focused on the collecting of the data. Obviously, it's an event that has over 5,000 athletes across 22 venues. So consolidating that data and providing it to the research team, making sure we can get it from the support we need. So that comes from venues, from the financial team, the host society, spectator data, athlete data, data from the NSOs. So it just continues to reach, and kind of once we have those boundaries set, getting data from all those corners, and then documenting that data collection process, so that, like Greg spoke to earlier, each games can build on the sustainability efforts from previous iterations. And another role I have with this project is promoting it both internally and externally as an environmental initiative and legacy item of the 2025 games. So externally, this represents further accountability on the host society's behalf of the impact that the games have, going beyond an economic perspective. And then internally with the host society team, this project really helps make sustainability tangible as its own functional area of the games. So whereas other priority areas of sustainability at the event build off existing processes, so focusing on things like transportation and waste management, and energy efficiency at the venues, this project helps demonstrate that sustainability in the sporting event space goes beyond those added solutions with existing processes. So yeah, back to you, Colin.
Thank you very much, Isaac, and everybody here. Yeah, I think I'll wrap it up with a big thank you, and we look forward to seeing all the amazing work you do over the next year, sharing findings at next year's event. And I must say that even you see here, it's quite a collaborative effort. Once they're able to improve the abilities to estimate, or push the needle on the estimation of Scope 3 emissions, it's going to be a hyper collaborative effort to continue to build the strategies to reduce those emissions. So we're going to need more and more collaboration happening. So convening like this is just an example of that. So thank you, everyone. And I think I'm going to pass it back to you, Jill.
Absolutely. That's me. I'm just looking at the time, and we are gonna run really quickly through this section. Of course, this project that we're talking about is very focused on the 2025 games. But we did want to let everybody know on this call that the Canada Games Council behind the scenes has actually been working with a number of people who are actually on this call and a number of researchers and supporters sort of behind the scenes to develop a national sustainable sport event toolkit. So what we want to do is take all the practices we're learning right now and what we're working on with 25 and give it out to everybody. So we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. There are a number of different sustainable sport event toolkits across the globe. But what we have done is we've taken a look with the support of a student team. We've taken a look across the globe and we've sort of taken best practices and put them into the Canadian market. So I was going to go into a little bit of detail, but we're a bit tight for time here. So I just wanted to flag that this sustainable sport event toolkit will be rolled out in the next few months, but we are looking for those who are working in this space, interested to provide feedback, to disseminate it prior to public dissemination, to get some feedback from our community. We want to hear from you. We want to see if this is something that could actually work for your organization or as an athlete or as a communicator. So the focus areas we are looking at are energy and climate, circularity and waste, and natural regeneration. I'm not going to go into detail right now because we're tight for time, but I will send a follow-up email for those who opted in to receive information from Green Sports Day Canada. Or if you are interested and you would like to jot down my email really quickly and reach out, you can see my email at the bottom of the screen here. And just aware of time again, Maddie, I'm going to pass it back over to you to talk a little bit about Eileen and sustainable sport sponsorship.
Thank you. I'm so excited about all the resources that are coming out. I just want to say congrats to the whole team. Obviously, super biased. I'm at U of T, so I'm a fan of all the work that they're doing, but it is really encouraging as someone who has worked in the sector, worked in academia, and kind of been trying to look at how do we bridge these gaps, to just see so much movement here in Canada on bridging the gaps, building alliances, building coalitions. I think it's something that Canada does really well, actually, is build teams around this. And climate action is absolutely a team sport. So it's good to see it. And speaking of teams, Eileen McManaman is like the godmother of green sport, certainly in Canada, definitely in North America. She has been on this beat for 20 years, coming out of a background working for a sponsor organization, later worked in baseball, later worked for the government in technology development, and eventually started 5T, one of the leading organizations in North America and Europe, working with a broad range of clients to drive their sustainability solutions and specifically to find ways to do it in collaboration. And she's kind of the teamwork queen on this. So when we thought about how do we do sustainable sports sponsorship, it was a no-brainer, like we need to ask Eileen. So she's joining us today wearing her 5T hat. But for those who aren't aware, she's also the board chair at the Green Sports Alliance, the organization that started Green Sports Day back in the day. And she's been involved in this for years and years and years. So Eileen, so excited to have you and excited to hear what you can share with us about where this sponsorship conversation is going. It's been one that's kind of been on the back burner for us in Canada. It was the #1 requested topic last year out of Green Sports Day. It's at the top of everyone's minds. I mean, Katie and Greg both kind of highlighted the finances of sport are kind of messy and tricky, and it's hard to find that commitment. It's hard to bring people in. How do we do it? How do we do that and hold our business goals, our commercial kind of necessity in mind, but also the sustainability piece?
Yeah. Oh, fantastic stuff. And I may have you control the slides from there, I think, because I couldn't do that. But yeah, no, thanks a million for having me. This is always such a joy because honestly, on Green Sports Day, and which has become now Green Sports Week in Canada, you guys just kind of kick ass. Yeah, you've got so much great content and you pull so many folks in and bring, the range of topics to light. But, this one's near and dear to my heart. Show me the money. How do we get the money? How do we get the funding? How do we get the partners that we need? So if you want to roll the slides from your side, Maddie, I'll do the old next slide thing because I don't think I can from my side. So, and we will go a little bit rapid fire, and then we'll absolutely, as we have options for questions, I'm there for you.
Stand by. Sorry, pulling them up. Give me a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I flipped that to you because I realized I was like, oh, I can't control from here, so I'll flip it back over to her. But I can start rambling ahead, because, you know, they're slides. So basically, you know, one of the things that happened in 2020 was a lot of things started to converge, and everybody started to understand better that climate health is human health, human health is climate health, and that really helped the narrative. But what it really drove, and not just COVID, but of course we also had Black Lives Matter. We also had a number of other, you know, and all the economic cracks in society were really laid bare, and that forced a massive shift in messaging from brands, which all of you see and all of you continue to see every single day. If you sit down and watch, you know, linear television and see ads, you'll see that probably 70 to 80% of the ads now are talking about what they're doing for people, what they're doing for the planet. You can flip through, Maddie, next and next. And next and next. There we go. Seismic shift in brand strategy. And this is what was happening. We had concurrent climate crises. You know, we have all these lovely visuals. And go next. Culture shocks like crazy. Power shifts also. Athletes' voices just becoming bigger and bigger. So these are, we can hold here for a second. I like to say the 5 forces driving what business cares about now. And that's the good news is they care about this stuff. And we all might be cynical or skeptical, but the fact is they have responsibility, you know, to report, and they're under serious regulation. And even just 1 year into the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission requiring reporting, there were already huge fines being issued for being non-compliant. So that drives things. Money drives things. It's, as much as we don't want to say that, it will continue to do that, but in a different way. Obviously, corporate citizenship is huge as a recruitment tool. People don't want to go to work for a company, and we always say, oh, it's the millennials, it's Gen Z, but frankly, it's everybody. Really, everybody wants to work for a better company. So it's a retention driver in tight labor markets. It's a consumer expectation, right? We all have greater sensitization to these issues. It used to be, oh, that happens over there. Oh, that's something in the global south. Oh, I'm affluent, not so big of an issue for me. Boom, you lost your job. Now you're not so affluent. So and we all keep getting pounded by extreme weather. So everybody is feeling it. And as they're feeling it, they have greater interest in understanding it. And then that translates to taking action. In the final one, which isn't a funny or fun one to talk about on a Friday, but these systemic tensions and concurrent crises are going to continue to be that concurrent, compounding, interrelated. So this is why, in a good news story, no matter what happens for Canada in the next election, no matter what happens for the US in the next election, business isn't going backward. They understand these forces and they're responding to them. And I'm just off of Climate Week last week in New York, and you see that in every room of the week. This is what's being talked about. So nobody's going backward. Good news. What does that mean for sports partnerships? Keep going. Let's see. Next slide. So they are changing. Yeah, we can hold here for a second. I won't dwell on this, and you can kind of keep these stats, but I refresh these from time to time. Again, 63% of global brands shifted their messaging. This is the big one. 67% feel sponsorship is a better platform for them than other pieces of their marketing portfolio because it allows them to tell long form stories. It allows them to build a narrative over time, over a season. And just every year on year, an increase in the number of brands who are leveraging around this space and an increase in the number of properties that are offering them the assets to do so. And we'll roll on, next slide. And again, just a little bit of background. We try to keep refreshing this because in the past we had the issue, I would say pre-2020, oh, you know, our fans don't care about that. Our consumers don't care about that. We just keep bringing the stats and say, you know what, they actually do. So go ahead. And sorry, Hockey Canada, if you're on the call, but we do use you, and you know that you've had this issue. When you don't do things the right way, it costs you. So when you don't make a right sponsorship decision, when you take that quick check from, you know, a shady crypto company, or maybe it's betting or gambling, or something, or just a company in any sector that's not taking care of managing their risk, that check is at risk of cashing. And that means then you have to go back out to the marketplace and go find somebody else to give you a check. And these guys, this is Miami Heat's arena, they took a big haircut on getting the next partner. Because that next partner that came in said, well, we know you're kind of in a tough spot, so they could negotiate them down. Hockey Canada lost $24 million in 5 months. 5 months. And this is a big vulnerability, as I come to at the end of this little slide deck, is, as you all know, there's a bit of a shallow pool for big sponsors in Canada. So this is where you're at risk. If one thing goes wrong, it's a domino effect. But on the other side, you can see that, you know, when you take the time to look at who you're partnering with and how you're partnering, and it takes longer to get there, you know, that check will cash for 20 years. And this is already outdated. This is Angel City FC. Their revenues are up to 180 million, and mostly because people are coming to them because they're values driven. So we'll keep rolling. And I'm sorry if I'm talking very fast, but just to give you a couple examples from the field, this one I quite love. So Pepsi is the UEFA being the European Football Federation, as most of you know. They are the main sponsor of UEFA. They have decided in the last year that they're going to give them $1 million to work just on circularity. And they have some specific goals around that, you know, the Champions League will be played in a zero waste stadium it's pretty soon, 2026. So they've got a pilot project going, but they put that $1 million into that. And they declined the marketing rights for the Euro 2024 championships that were just held in Germany. Imagine that they forsook marketing inventory for sustainability operations spending. Another one, this is where Hyundai, who's a FIFA sponsor, wanted to launch of all things, a sustainability campaign during the Qatar World Cup. Not great, but they realized that FIFA wasn't the platform for that. They didn't have the assets that Hyundai wanted, and they didn't feel that was credible. So they, instead of spending that activation money with FIFA, they went to Common Goal. So all this by way of saying, if you're not providing the inventory that a sponsor wants, then, you know, they may go elsewhere. And so it's hard. It is, you have to make the investment, but the fact is there are a lot of brands that are out there that are willing to fund things that are back of house, off to the side. They're not on the television camera. That's not what's the most important to them right now. So you do have valuable assets when you're working on this. We can keep rolling. Again, just to re-emphasize, monitoring media coverage is increasing. Go next. Sustainability reporting is increasing. So this will be fundamental to your mission of putting your organization and your efforts out there. You have to be ready to provide them with the receipts because they're seeing it everywhere else they go. Some of you may have seen this before. You know, the other thing they're looking at is this data-driven performance measurement of the impact. So if you say you're working on something, you need to be able to show it, but they're also having increasing tools to be able to check it. One of those is our tool, and if you're happy, you can read through this and see how we showed Heineken how they can compare their investment in each of these properties to see which one is hitting the mark. You can flip through next one. We do that around a scorecard framework that has a number of different topics we look at across people, planet, profit, and partnerships, how these people are showing up in systemic change. And we can give them a footprint that looks like this. And they can decide what to do with that. They can say, oh, we're a little far apart. Maybe we need to work together. So this is just a little bit of what that report looks like, but we can also say, hey, here's where you're super aligned. So these are the credible themes you can bring forward in a campaign. This is where you can confidently step out together and actually put outward messaging. And just, you know, if you want to look around, cheat off of other people's exam papers, here's some folks who are doing things really well. And happy to, we'll skip past it and you can ask any questions that you want. So when I looked around a little bit in the Canadian landscape, and just to give you a bit of the guidance of how do you do that? Well, you know what? It always starts with pitching what you're about. that sounds really trite, and you're like, of course we do that. But a lot of people put that on a single slide in their pitch deck. It should be the entire pitch deck. Angel City actually has a pitch deck that just for 12 slides talks about the things they do, the value, where they're showing up, how they're showing up, metrics on these things. And then the last deck of the slide has here's the assets that you could activate against and what they cost. That is not, it's not a full pitch deck that's a menu of assets that anybody could buy anywhere. Go ahead. Again, and so one is pitch your values. The second is whatever you've achieved. It doesn't have to be in sustainability, but show them that you have a track record of delivering on what you say you're going to do. If you're a property that says we're innovators, then give them metrics around how you've innovated. Whatever your community, everybody has community metrics. And if you aren't doing that in a quantified method, if it's just qualitative, or if it's we reached X thousand kids through our program, start getting a bit more granular on that. But for sure, put out your achievements across the board. This is just a way of mapping out programs. I grabbed this quickly from another client, clearly in Indiana, but by showing them who you work with on these issues, then it gives you a conversation discussion point when you're going into those meetings. So it might seem like that's a little bit off to the side, but anything that you're doing across these fronts, I know Canada Games has done a nice job with economic impact and procurement in the past. And the last thing I would always say is environmental messaging is very difficult. It's difficult to absorb. Translate it to one of the other two things. Translate it to economic impact, translate it to social impact. Why is waste handling important? Oh, it helps bring, clean air, but healthier communities. You have to translate it. People care about people, and the people who don't care about people usually care about money. So you got to find yourself in one of those two camps. The people who care about the climate, really at the end of the day are the people who care about people. So these are kind of the hot hit list of, how do you pitch it? How do you position it? I don't know what else I have in this deck. Here we go. Challenges for you. Shallow sponsorship pool. That can be difficult, right? The same folks show up for the same things. Trying to avoid these short-term lucrative categories like betting. Oligarchy, bad actors. I won't say anything bad about banks, but banks. If you're going to work with a bank, try to look for a credit union, try to look for someone who's really doing the right thing, because, in all honesty, I think they have about 5 more minutes before they start getting in a lot of trouble. So, think about that as you have lower activation spending. We have lower activation spending in Canada. It is improving, but it used to be super low. For every dollar they spent on rights, they expected the property to deliver all this stuff. And they wouldn't spend outside of that on an advertising campaign that highlighted what they were doing. So they're not giving you lift. It is a challenge, but I think when you can tap into your sustainability activities, you open up other pockets of money in the company. You open up HR dollars that go towards retention and recruitment. You open up investor relations dollars. You open up just their ESG reporting dollars that say, wait, we can use, wait, what? We can use this? We're not just getting branding and marketing stuff. Yeah, typically still seeing people focused on the cost. Cost too much, we can't do it. Just keep looking at it as a revenue opportunity. Jill, as you guys were talking about your project just now, you have folks that can work on a coalition of organizations to bring that forward as a whole, which helps with that smaller sponsorship pool when all of you together go to all, those 10 big ones together and say, this is what we're doing, and get everybody into the pool at the same time. That's really helpful. Lots of examples out to follow. Spotlight swinging back toward North America. I'm on constant phone calls about European football, soccer coming our way. Take advantage of that spotlight, however it's coming. You got some strong host cities that have this mindset, which is great. And coalition of new economy partners. There's a lot of companies in transition economy. I'll leave this one in here for you. We often speak to brands on this and tell them how to lean in, but just so you know what we're telling them, so you're prepared when they come asking for it. We're telling them to include the sustainability operations person from the event. And if there isn't one, then get the facilities or the event lead or whoever into the room, into the partnership conversation. We're telling them they should be reviewing your procurement policies as a rights holder. So be prepared for, for how we're pushing them from the other side if they're not doing it. We're asking them to support any certification efforts and initiatives. So when we're taking that hopefully from a cost center for rights holders to something where at least it's neutral, revenue neutral, and it gives you actually an asset to work with that you can leverage with many other partners. We're telling them to include sustainability performance in their marketing contracts and their sponsorship contracts. I did say that from the stage in New York City with a lot of brands in the audience, so be prepared. I think people like that one. And one thing that you can do is, host civic regional sustainability conversations. There's already conversations going on wherever you live. Knock on the door and say, hey, we're here from, Canada Games Council. Hey, we're from, Rowing Canada. We want to talk, what's going on here? Can we talk about that? Instigate that conversation. Yeah, and I'll leave you with this, market opportunity looks great to me. Honestly, I see more money is being spent in sponsorship. It's being spent with fewer properties. Selectivity is getting high. You see the shift from whatever it was to NWSL. You see the shift from team, league, federation to athlete. So, some people are getting bigger pieces. The pie is bigger, but some people's slices are shrinking because they're not delivering the assets that are needed. Yeah, I think all this is also, sustainable events, expected, not optional. That's just going to keep coming. And, fans and consumers care, that. Media are watching. A lot of words in a very short time.
Thank you so much. It's good because I think a lot of folks, it seems like sustainability, we've always focused on performance and the money side. That's been the sports business discussion forever. That's been the framework. And now we're saying actually purpose, so social and enviro is important, and it has to be part of these conversations, and it has to interact with the business side as well. So thank you for that breakdown. Really important, instructive. I think there's going to be a lot of people going back and we're watching that part of the video at the end. As some key takeaways there. But thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you, as always, on the Green Sports Day.
Happy Green Sports Day, everyone.
And we now come to another Canadian, also based in BC. Mike Douglas is a professional skier and a filmmaker. He's on the board of Protect Our Winters, huge advocate for sustainability in sport and beyond. Mike and I actually met in Adam Van Coverden's office in Ottawa a couple of years ago, doing some advocacy on the Hill around some of these issues. And when we were thinking about how do we offer folks in Canada something interesting to do over the weekend for Green Sports Day, since it lands on a Sunday, I was thinking about Mike and the films that he makes. And I thought, there's something really special about films that show sports and the environment and use sports as a tool for the storytelling piece. So Mike is going to talk a little bit about what he does and why he does it and how he came to do it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the fun we have in store for y'all this weekend. Mike.
Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, my name is Mike Douglas. I am coming to you from Whistler, BC, the shared unceded territory of the Squamish Nation and the Lil'wat Nation. And, my story is I'm here as a filmmaker, but my story really starts in sports as well. I'm a skier. I did a stint on the Canadian freestyle ski team back in the 90s and took a run at the 94 Olympics in Lillehammer. And the way that I came to be aware of climate change and also be concerned about it was through the training that I was doing as a skier. I was training here on the Horseman Glacier on Blackcomb Mountain, and every summer we would train all summer and compete all winter, and that's sort of how our cycle worked. And we were skiing on a glacier, which allowed us to ski all summer. And over time and being on that glacier every summer, I started to see changes through the 90s and then into the early 2000s. I saw those changes sort of accelerating. And that really woke me up to this idea of climate change, of global warming. And as I started to wake up to that, I started seeing that everywhere I went, that these changes were happening to our environment. And in fact, if we flash forward, 35 years later to now, this was the first summer that climate change finally stopped allowing skiers to train on the Horseman Glacier. So after over 35 years, that glacier is now essentially gone, which is incredibly sad. I mean, that is so much of my life and training and my sport took place there. And to see it go away in my lifetime was, it's shocking to say the least. So through sport and through my reinvention of sport in the late 90s, I competed at the highest levels, less on the Olympic side, but more on the sort of X Games, sort of progressive side of the sport. And through that, I ended up getting offered a job in television, being a commentator for skiing events. And for the better part of a decade, I was sort of the voice of progressive skiing, primarily in the US. I worked for ESPN for 14 years. I worked also for NBC and CBS. So I got into sort of the real television world, I would say. And one of the things that we tried to do as commentators, especially for, what was essentially a fringe sport like skiing, was learn how to tell those stories. Like, how can we translate what's going on the slopes into a compelling narrative for the viewers at home? And so, working for those big US networks was interesting because we were able to see when we were connecting with the audience. Like, we literally had minute by minute ratings that we could monitor. And so if all of a sudden this narrative about, someone's sick family member was really connecting, we had the data that sort of backed that up. And through that process, I was able to learn a lot about storytelling. And after, chasing around the ski circuit for a decade, that started to get a little bit old, and I was tired of making money, so I decided to become a documentary filmmaker. And so the great thing about working on documentary films is that it allowed me to tell longer stories, more personal stories that sort of connect on a deeper level. The bad part, of course, is that documentary filmmakers don't make great living, but it's all good. And as I sort of got involved with Protect Our Winters and became more environmentally conscious, I really did my best to try and bridge those worlds. Like, how can we bring storytelling, sport, documentary filmmaking, and also bring these messages and these stories that need to be told. And one thing that I discovered when I got into that world is that, especially when it comes to environmental topics, we are often preaching to the choir. We're often talking to the same people over and over again. And yes, there's a lot of amazing films and examples of storytelling in the environmental space. But for the most part, through my observation, I was seeing that those stories were being told to the same people over and over again. You go to a film festival and you look in the audience and it's the same group that you saw the year before. So one thing that I've really tried to work on is how do we reach new audiences? How do we break out of that sort of hardcore environmentalist world and tell stories that resonate with the general population? And I can say that it's a lot easier to talk about this than to actually do it. But, I think sport is an incredible vehicle to use to tell stories, but also to carry messaging with those stories. And we're hearing it today from everyone who's spoken about how, the environmental conditions are affecting sport, or with Eileen, who just gave us this cool breakdown of how sponsorships are changing. And so for me, it became, how do we put a spin on an environmental story that sort of will hit a new audience? And I'm not going to say I've been successful all the time, but occasionally it does work. And a film that is in the group today is called Sam and Me, which was which the sort of the nexus was when a young teen named Sam Tierney came to me and said that he was having severe climate anxiety, and he was looking for a little bit of advice on how to handle that. And so I knew that he was a passionate skier, and you know, the way we decided to tackle that was to go ski together once a week for a whole season and talk about his issues and talk about the climate and the environment and things that he could do to sort of empower himself and get through that, and hopefully make a little bit of positive change along the way. And it's definitely a film that has gone outside of the inner circle a little bit. And so I think as sports people, we have this incredible drama vehicle, which is sports. And if we can learn to you know, tell stories through that can hit deeper, and there's so many incredible examples out there. I mean, anyone who's seen Drive to Survive will know what that did for Formula One auto racing. And we've seen the spin-offs from that come Fast and Furious, whether it's Tour de France or you know, the tennis version, the golf version. So it shows the desire for people to connect with sports on a deeper level. And it also shows the potential for us as storytellers to take sport and bridge it with, you know, other topics that matter to us. So something I'm very passionate about, and hopefully, you know, groups like this, we can help move that needle just a little bit.
Well, thank you so much for introducing the work you do. I'm excited for people to see Sam and Me if you haven't already. We have I'm really excited about it. We've actually gone through and watched, like, I personally went and watched so many videos of like films that kind of tie that kind of sports drama together with environmental issues. And so we've got a small collection that we've put on our website linking to their original streaming platform, wherever that is. We do encourage you to look up who is doing it, and we tried to make that very clear through the links. And in most cases, they're kind of hosted on YouTube, and the names of the creators are there. Do go look at who they are, you know, how they came to make their films, because the stories are all equally interesting to what Mike just shared about his journey. They all have very interesting journeys of how, you know, why they chose to tell this story through soccer or through running or through whatever it was. But as Mike said, they're all kind of high emotion, like sport, right? It's all high emotions, low stakes, and that's why people love it. And then when you introduce something that's very high stakes, like climate change, you really increase the kind of drama of the film and what it can mean and how it hits people. So I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you, Mike, for sharing your story with us a little bit, and how Sam and Me came to be part of this. And it's on the website, greensportsver.ca. It'll be there all weekend. We encourage you to go and check that out. And I will pass it back to Jill to close out Green Sports Day 2024.
Thank you so much, Maddie, and thank you, everyone. As we wrap up this incredible Green Sports Day Summit, Maddie and I just want to take a moment to thank you all for your participation today. It was so nice to see how many numbers we got on the call. Thank you so much. And we've had a phenomenal week. There's just been so many great conversations, so much engagement, and we'll definitely be posting some of our recaps in the upcoming weeks. And we're just so excited to see the traction that Green Sports Day Canada is getting. We want to thank all of our partner groups. They're listed at the bottom of your screen. Big shout out to the GSA in the US. And this is very much a cross-border collaboration. So if anyone's on the call from the GSA, thank you so much. This week has really showcased the power of sport for real positive change. And we're seeing that happen across the board. Again, one more time, big round of applause, big thank you to our coalition members, our partners, all of the speakers today for taking the time out of their day to come and speak to this really important topic. They've all contributed to this event this entire week to be a great success. So let's just carry that energy and that inspiration from this summit into the upcoming months as we continue to build this more sustainable and resilient future for sport in Canada. I do also want to say that there are a few teams that are playing over the weekend. I really encourage everybody to take a look. There are some professional teams who will be activating for Green Sports Day, some amateur leagues who will be activating for Green Sports Day. And we really want to remind everyone to keep your eyes out for venues across Canada lighting up green in honor for Green Sports Day. If you're in a space where there's a venue that is green, take a shot, tag us on social media. It's greensportsday.canada. We definitely want to share everybody's experiences across Canada of celebrating this really important day. So thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing this ripple effect of today's conversations and all of the work that you guys are doing moving forward. Please do not hesitate to reach out. We want to keep this conversation going throughout the year. It's not just October 6th. Let's keep this going all year round. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day.